Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. Today is all about marketing. You know, I love to talk about marketing. Heck, my very first course that I ever launched in the middle of the pandemic was called, wait for it, that's my drum roll, Momentum Marketing, remember? I love to talk about marketing. It's such a powerful conversation. It is so important to every business owner, and today's guest knows it all. I interview Pamela Durkin. Pamela has been in the interior design world running a high-end design business, and after 30 years, she is now helping other designers create a business they love and teaching them how to be magnetic with their marketing and attract the best clients. She has a book. It's called Elevate. We're going to talk about it in this episode. You can find it on Amazon. She is a past president of the ASID Florida South Chapter. She served on the board of architecture and design in New Jersey. And she lives in Naples, Florida, a place that I keep near and dear to my heart. And in her spare time, she loves spending time on the beach, as I would, living in Florida and learning new moves in her home dance studio. I love that about Pamela. She has a really great sense of humor. After I recorded this episode with her, I went to follow her on Instagram, and she does some really great fun reels. So I'll definitely link to all that stuff in the show notes. But for now, here is my episode all about magnetic marketing with Pamela Durkin. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Welcome to the podcast, Pamela. I'm excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here too, so I'm looking forward to it.
I always love chatting with fellow designers who've been in industry, well, much longer than I have, and who have kind of like pivoted their business model, and now you're helping designers sort of somewhat like I am. So why don't you introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Pamela Durkin. I am a practicing interior designer, and I'm located in Naples, Florida, which is on the Gulf Coast side. My practice consists of residential and commercial work, which I've done pretty much my whole career. But it all started back in high school when I took a class in interior design, and that kind of was the springboard for my love of design, and still doing it. And now, you know, like you mentioned, pivoting to help others as well.
I love that. I love that you, that you're helping. You have like so much marketing. I can't wait to dive into all the things. First of all, Naples, Florida, I feel like is my second home because my mom used to have a place there. I used to spend all my holidays there.
Nice.
It's a quick flight south of Toronto. So is it hot there right now?
Oh yeah, it's not. Oh, it's 95 and it's brutal right now. Yeah.
That's awful.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I want to live there, and then I hear that, and I'm like, no, I'm okay up here in Canada for now.
You get used to it, just like anything else. In the winter, you stay inside. In the summer, here, you stay inside. That's what you do.
A lot of indoor time.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, so I guess like first off, I would love to just talk about the whole idea of marketing, right? And I know that one of the things that you've talked about is like how to be magnetic. And I love that terminology, by the way. I think that's so powerful. But the idea of like how to be magnetic to your perfect future client, because it's something that I teach a lot inside of Power Process and in our membership. I talk about, finding that ideal client. Who is that dream customer that you want to serve? And I think it takes us a long time to figure that out and then figure out how to find them. And what you may or may not know is I did my very first course that I did was called Momentum Marketing.
Nice.
All about marketing. But then I realized everybody wanted to learn process from me. So I kind of was like, okay, we'll focus on that. But there was so many questions all the time. And we get this all the time. Like, okay, I know, or I think I know who my client is, but like, how do I attract them?
Right.
And that's the idea, that magnetism.
Right.
Maybe share a little bit more for everyone who's feeling that. How do I attract them? Like that magnet.
So one of the best ways to do that is to start toting around yet another notebook with you, right? And when you're having interactions with clients, you can write down the things that they say to you, the things that you've helped them with, the struggles that you alleviated for them. And that's really the best way to be magnetic, because as you know, so magnetic marketing really started from a gentleman named Dan Kennedy, who you may be familiar with his work. He did a lot of ads for Proactive and things like that. He's a brilliant copywriter. So he came up with this term, magnetic marketing. And he says that you want to answer and talk about the conversation that's going on in your client's mind. So what are they thinking about? What are they worried about? What do they need help with? And so if you start answering those questions in your marketing, that's when you start attracting those types of clients.
Yeah. And I think the key there is that it's in their words, right? It's in your client's words. It's not
exactly
what you're sort of like, oh, I help, busy professionals. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something very generic. Like I help busy professionals love the home they're in. Well, that's
don't we all
general, right?
Right. Yes. So
what would be an example?
An example of that. So, I mean, you create this avatar. We call that the client avatar, right? And I say that you take the best versions of all your greatest clients and you create sort of the one perfect future client, right? And so in my book, I talk about how I created my own avatar, gave the person a name. It was a woman. It was a busy CEO. And so you start to dial down and create this personality, this avatar for the type of person that you want to attract. And then when you're writing your post, your blog post, or talking about your business, you're really thinking about how would I talk to that person if we were at a networking event?
I like that. You also just breezed over the fact, in your book, we'll get to that because you have a book, which is very cool. I want to talk about that. Is it something like, this is a question I get asked all the time is, what if I don't have any, like, what if I've never had any design clients? Like, what do you say to someone who is just starting out and they have no concept of who they want to serve?
Then you start with your best guess. And I know that makes us designers crazy because we want to control everything that we possibly can, but you just do your best. Think about somebody that you would like to work with and what do you think that they would want or what they would need. And then when you're starting out, of course, you're taking on different projects because one, you've got to get the ball rolling, right? And then two, you have to see, who is that person for me? Where does my work resonate the most? And so you try different things, you make notes, you make adjustments, and then you refine it from there.
Yeah, I think that's something I would also probably add, and I'm curious your thoughts, that sometimes it is just, no one likes to hear this. It is sometimes a bit of trial and error.
It is, and it continues. Your avatar will change every couple years as your business grows, as you learn more information, as you decide, what you want more than something you knew maybe 2 years before. So it's not like a set it and forget it type situation. So it's continually evolving. So we have to be comfortable, which again will make everyone cringe. We have to be comfortable with continual evolvement.
Yeah. And I've seen that even in my own design business, from where I started, either the types of clients I had or the types of clients I wanted. Sure, I always wanted the billionaire client, but let's be honest, once I started getting really intentional with really dive into who my ideal client was as a team. And I think I've shared this on the podcast before, how I had a junior designer, a design intern a few years ago. And at the end of the year, we were reading through our company vision, our core values, and we read through the ideal client avatar that we have. Mm-hmm. And she was like, Rebecca, sorry, I have to raise my hand because this is not really our client. I think that maybe we need to be more realistic because our client doesn't have the $1 million house. They have the whatever. And I said to her, I was like, it's aspirational. It's a little bit ahead of where we want to be.
Absolutely.
The next year, when we read through it, she was like, oh, I see. Because this is our client now. And that's when I said, okay, now that means we need to up level.
Change it. Time to change it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
And
I totally agree. It's aspirational, such a great word for it, is you're not going for what you have, you're going for your next level.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm a very strong believer in that if you put it out into the world, if you write it on paper, you can in some ways manifest it because you are very in tune with those key elements. If you're writing down that your ideal client is a CEO, like you said, like you'll start to pick that up when you have a discovery call with someone.
Right.
And they maybe mention what their job is, and then that is your sign that, oh, I need to pursue this lead a little bit more, maybe intensively than I would. This is my ideal. And then you start to reflect on your projects and say, what parts of these projects were the ideal client and what parts did not match it? Because that happens too, right? Sometimes you'll get a little bit of it, but not everything.
Yeah, you're not always going to hit a home run. And I think that one of the things that the advantages that we have as designers is that we're super perceptive, and we just need to take that creativity and that perception to our marketing process as well. So again, to your point, when you're interviewing potential clients, write down keywords that they're saying, because the next client is probably going to say some of those keywords too. And that's either going to be we know where this is going and I don't want to take this project, or this is somebody that I want to work with. I will say every discovery call I do, if someone says, is this a project you would be interested in taking on? That's always a good sign because they're asking permission.
I like that. Because
tells you the type of person they are, right?
Yeah. Not, hey, I'm ready to start tomorrow. Let's go. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It's going to be a give and take, which is what you want in this kind of intimate relationship that you have as a designer. Is you need that give and take. They need to give you information and then you need to digest it and then give them a solution and be able to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So once, understanding that ideal client is part of the process, but then how is it that once you kind of get a sense, like, how do you attract, like, where do you find these people?
So, there's a couple ways to do it. I'm a big fan of leveraging your network to get to more people that are also in really high quality opportunities. So if you're working with builders or realtors or building managers who are also looking to get that type of client, then you're going to multiply your opportunities very easily because you can put more effort into that relationship and then get 5 or 10 quality leads, as opposed to going one at a time, which is a little bit harder to do. So I like going, the network and referral situation when it comes to your network and your other related trades.
So what do you mean by that leverage? Like, do you mean sending out an email to past clients? Like, what are some specific examples of leveraging your network? Because I know a lot of designers think, I just need to create more content on Instagram.
Right.
Like, I'm assuming you're not referring to that network, but I don't know.
So, there's of course, there's online and offline ways to network with someone, right? There is Instagram and social media and email and things like that. And then there's, of course, in-person opportunities. So you have to think about who is your audience. If you want to dive into high-end builders that can, bring more opportunities your way, then you should be curating your audiences offline and online to that type of referral source. And you can do that by posting content that has to do with what's important to them, right? Those people want to make their businesses look better than the competition. So how are you rounding out their services, right? How are you making them look like they can do more for their clients? They want to close more business. They want to close more business quicker. So how can you provide those services to someone like a builder? And so I think that that's how you have to start thinking about is who's my best source of referrals or business? And then how can I help them? How do I come from a place of giving to elevate their business, which then will in turn elevate mine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. We worked a few years ago with with some big builders. They do like communities and model homes. And I loved that work because, well, there really wasn't a client per se. Like the client wasn't, there was a client, but they weren't picky about which wallpaper, which shade of blue. They just wanted it to look good and fit into the budget. And I loved working like that. And so I remember saying to my team, like, how can we get in front of more builders, because this is a project, like type of work we want to do more of. And we started to craft, and we never really fully, I'll be honest with you, because then the pandemic hit and we never really, we're looking at going back to that plan, but we had a really good plan. And we created this sort of like PDF document and like sort of this whole conversation around what we bring to the table and how we can elevate by getting, because we were getting a lot of press at the time. You know, we design magazine worthy model homes, right? Here's the proof of concept. We can bring a great audience to here's how we help you sell your community to your audience. And thinking about, as opposed to hire us, we're awesome.
Right. How
does hiring us make your life better?
Right.
And that's a more commercial flip side of it. But I think with a homeowner, it's the same thing. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but when I see, you know, designers posting on Instagram, and I mean, we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it too, because I have people who help with my posts, and sometimes they post and they're like, look at this pretty fabric. And I see it and I'm like, oh, that's just not going to hit anywhere. Like, who cares?
Right.
And it's about the messaging. Like, do you want to talk maybe a bit more about that? Like the messaging behind how we're helping you. It's not about us. It's how what we do makes your life better.
Yeah. And so the easiest way to do that. So I always say that designers are notorious for reporting as opposed to storytelling. And that's kind of to your point that you just referred to. And again, this goes back to carrying the notebook around. If you can post a picture, but then talk about an interaction you had with a client, or there may be some design element that you were in question on, like you weren't sure if we should go this way or that way, and you had to have a conversation with your client in the back and forth as to why one thing was important versus another. If you can recount that story, that allows the people who may hire you in the future to understand how you interact, that that is a give and take in terms of the design process and why all of that's important. The reporting doesn't really help anyone who's looking to work with a designer, doesn't really give us any insight. So if we can talk about stories and interactions, it's a much more compelling way to be magnetic.
It's almost like the why versus the how. Like, why was this mudroom transformed versus how did you do it? Like most people, I would imagine, don't really care that you design the green to complement the green. And then there's the texture in the carpet. Like, they can see it, they like it. It's understanding that why and who is it for. You're so right. Like storytelling, it's something I learned when I worked with a publicist years ago, and we would submit our projects to magazines, to publications. And she would always say, well, what's the story? What's the angle?
Right.
Like, well, it's a beautiful kitchen. We took down a wall. We opened it up. She's like, yeah,
it's not enough.
It's not enough. Like, who's the family? Like, what is it? A story about organization? Is it a kid-friendly space? Like, what is it?
Right.
She drilled it into me. It was really annoying at the time. I was like, just take that picture as I get that published. But it was a really great learning for me that I understand now. That's when I meet with a client, I'm at a consultation. And I don't know if you want to speak more to that, like as you move through that funnel, like how do you really lock that client in? But it's talking about past stories of how I worked with this client and they had a similar situation because their son was in a hockey league and they needed a place to put the hockey bag. Like that tells people, oh, that's true problem solving, and you're making life easier.
Absolutely. And it's just way more interesting. I mean, think about back when you were in school. What was easier for you to understand when the professor said, read the book, or when they recounted a story or talked about something in class and tied it back to maybe something that was happening today? I mean, it's just a different way of learning. It's a way that we absorb the information better. Mm-hmm. I just finished a book by Kendra Hall called Stories That Stick. Incredible book. And in the beginning of the book, she talks about this story of how her and her husband, I think, are in Italy, and they went to a perfume shop And this gentleman brings out this perfume and talks about the whole story of the perfume. They didn't smell it. They didn't ask how much it was, nothing. And the story is so incredible. You have to read the book, but the story is so incredible that they were laughing. They couldn't buy it because they didn't have like one in the store, an extra one in the store. So they ended up buying it. They never smelled it. They never, none of the things, it was all on the story. And so I think that we can become, again, going back to our creative spirits and our creative souls, we can go back to better storytelling because it's innate in us. And also, I think our industry has been watered down over the years because of, the internet and getting products available on the internet, that we've been meeting that where it's at instead of elevating our industry and talking about how we're making lives better by telling better stories.
Yeah, it's so true. I worked for many years as a waitress while I was putting myself through film school and trying to be an actor, whole previous life that I had out in Vancouver. But I worked at a restaurant, and the restaurant's Earl's. I've talked about it a lot here. Really great restaurant with amazing systems and processes. But they always emphasized storytelling behind the food and wine. It was it was irritating to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, do I really have to learn this story that the wine came from this valley and that the father was best friends with this person? And they would tell us to tell these stories to our clients about how it's the brother, there's two brothers. And then I don't even remember the stories, but you know what I mean? All the background that had nothing to do with the taste, the flavor profile of the wine. It was all about this story behind it, or where the tomatoes, the San Marzano tomatoes, came from Italy in these small batches from this little farm. Like, I still remember these things.
Right. See what you remember when you're telling a story. That how many years ago was that?
Oh my God, 20?
Exactly. So that's why it's so compelling.
Yeah, so true. I think too, I think as creatives, sometimes we just get kind of caught up in our own, like, the beauty of it, right? Because we are so passionate oftentimes about the fabrics and the patterns and the materials and the space, and we love the aesthetic, but we forget sometimes that, I always say, it doesn't really matter how good you are at what you do if nobody knows you exist. So it's really great if you're a great designer and but if nobody knows how good you are, if you can't go out there and tell the stories and get those clients, it's not about the beauty. And I think a lot of clients assume you're going to give them great design, but they want to know what else there is.
Right. I think that's the, sort of like that's the minimum bar requirement. But then I also challenge people, like, if you want to have a post that talks about the elements of a room, then I want you to go back and say, why? Why is this important? And that will also help dig a little deeper, as opposed to saying this color matches that color perfectly and all these other things. Why was that important? And then what was the process that made it? What was the reasoning why you had to spend the time to make that happen? So, I mean, the world needs beauty too. Let's be real. As designers, I mean, I think that's part of what we provide people is beautiful surroundings, but it also, there's other things to it. It's only one part of the process. And we do tend to lean on the pretty as the crutch, and which is fine every once in a while, but it's 100% of the time. So we also have to mix in these stories and why this is important and talk about these other things.
Yeah, it's like, if there's a Pamela, a Judy, a Rebecca, and a Sarah, and they're all designers in the same city and they all do beautiful work, well, what's the differentiator? Right. If you speak to a potential client, or the general public lands on your website and they see a bunch of pretty spaces, they're looking for the next thing. Like, what is it? The storytelling was what you're saying is really what will move them, likely emotionally, I imagine, right? To pick up the phone and make that call or make that purchase. Because oftentimes it is a big investment.
Huge. And I think it goes back to the word you used earlier, which was aspirational. Same with our clients. Like, they want to go to a place that they know they couldn't have gone on their own, right? And so they want to align themselves with a personality and a person that they feel can get them there.
So let me ask you a question. How did you, in your time working as a designer, how did you come to learn this? Like, did you have experiences where you weren't attracting clients and you needed to step up your game? Or did you have clients that were like totally the wrong ones? Because I know for me, I was in that vicious cycle. I call it, it's terrible. I've got to come up with a better word for it. I call it like the bad client loop, where it was like, I kept getting
Groundhog Day. You're in Groundhog Day.
yeah. And then they refer me to their friend with the same budget, the same value expectations.
Right.
And I couldn't break away. And it was hard. I had to really up level to get out of that client loop. So I'm just curious, like that was sort of my experience where I started to really pay attention to marketing and what does that mean? And how do I get in front of a different audience? But What was your experience? Like what brought you to be so passionate about marketing?
Yeah. And I think some of the client loop that you refer to comes down to you have to take the scary step to turn away business that's not right for you. And so that will come down to a boundary situation in your own personal business. So you will have to make that scary move, even if it's a blended approach. So for instance, if you're getting 3 calls a week and, you get 2 job opportunities, you may turn one down and keep the other one and then start, keep moving forward aspirationally to the next level of project. But to answer your question, I don't even know how many years ago it was. Maybe it's 10. It's like no time has no meaning anymore. But about, let's say 10 years ago, I discovered a marketing group that was founded by this gentleman that I mentioned earlier, Dan Kennedy, and talked about magnetic marketing. And I was going to events for this group and ended up in a mastermind with that group. And the mastermind was a group of 40 entrepreneurs that came from all across the country, not one creative person in the room and not many women in the room either. And the thing that I learned from that experience is it doesn't matter if you have a one-person business or somebody in the room literally had $100 million business. The issues were still the same. They were worried about, were they good enough at what they were doing? How do they get to the next level? Where do they find more business? I mean, those are fundamental things that we all think about in our own businesses. So I was struck by that. And to your point, yeah, I was getting to the point where I was working my butt off and I was really not making the progress that I wanted to make. And so you kind of get to this point where you're like, I got to do something's got to change here. I can't keep doing this. And I think that comes from a personal place. As many times as coaches and mentors say, you got to stop doing this. At the end of the day, it has to hurt enough that you have just thrown your hands up and said, we are done. We are not doing this anymore. And unfortunately, I think we've all been there at some point, but it really has to come from a place of, us making that call. So that's when I decided, what can I do? How can I pay attention better to what I'm doing to be more thoughtful in how I'm presenting my business so that I'm in the right place to get better opportunities?
Yeah, I think that's really great to hear because it does sometimes have to hurt a lot.
Oh God.
In any aspect of life, really, let's be honest, right? Like people hit the brink with their health and all of a sudden it's like, shoot, I got to start exercising or whatever it might be. It's like, until it gets really bad, sometimes we're just not motivated enough.
Right.
It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mentality.
Yeah. Status quo. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's so great. And so,
it sucks because we wish we had, a lot of times we'll waste a lot of years kind of waffling back and forth, right? Mm-hmm. And all I can say is, if you get in a room with other people and surround yourself with other people who are doing things that you admire, that will move you along a little faster. So I think just hanging out with really smart people who are doing things that you really look up to is the good peer pressure, as I call it. Will get you off the dime.
It's like they say, if you want to be a better tennis player, you need to, I'm not really a tennis player, but I just heard this somewhere and it made sense to me. I do like tennis. I just never play it. But if you want to be a better tennis player, you should be playing with someone who's better than you. Right?
Yes. And we don't want to be the smartest person in the room, as they say, and that's also daunting because nobody wants to look like they're, inferior in any way. And we have very fragile egos as creatives. And we always tend to think that we're not as good as we really are anyway. So that is a challenge. But I will say, just from being in groups like that you learn so much from other people. And then other people can see things in you that you cannot see.
Yes.
And it's so, or pinpoint issues that you're having, even though you're like, I don't know what's going on. It's just not working. And they're like, oh, we totally know what's happening here because we can see it, because we're not emotionally attached to it all like we are. So, yeah.
I find that so helpful. It's one thing to talk to your family and your friends, but when you're really in an atmosphere or an environment with peers or colleagues or people that are doing what you want to do, or maybe just a little bit ahead of you, they don't have to be so far. We see that all the time inside our designers room. I have this community membership for anyone who's taken Power of Process, which is my signature course. And it's so beautiful to see how the designers help each other. And someone comes to the table and, 5 people will turn around and say to one of the girls, because it's all women right now so far, say to one of the ladies, I can't believe you can't charge that. That's not enough money. And then someone else will say, absolutely not. Don't charge that. Or they will say, here's what you need to do. This happened to me. You need to call that client and deal with it straight on, or whatever it might be. And so you're really encouraging. And that's where, like, one of my little taglines that started this whole podcast is collaboration over competition. Because to me, when you have people around you who are supporting you and helping to lift you up, you are going to be so much stronger, as opposed to feeling like people are stabbing each other in the back and they're judging and judge. Like we live in such a judgmental world, and social media has just like magnified it.
Yes.
So I think there's so much power in those masterminds, in those groups. Certainly I see it inside my own group, but it's a good reminder to me, like, to continually be putting even myself in those situations with those other entrepreneurs who are doing the things that I want to do.
100%. And I'm such a huge fan, because of that experience that I had within that room, that there's so much to be learned outside of our industry as well, not just inside our industry, because there are techniques that other people are using in their businesses that are not maybe creative businesses or things like that, that we can adapt and haven't been seen yet, in the design industry. So I think that's such a great way to learn. Designers are just lifelong learners and lovers to learn. We know that. They love to learn new things. And I think that's such an admirable trait. And so why not harness that, right? And just help us, instead of getting another certification, maybe, learning how to network and to market and to sell better, so that we're comfortable and that we feel really good about what we're doing, and then surrounding ourselves by other really smart people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me about this book, because I can see it on the shelf behind you. First of all, what is the book about? And second of all, what inspired you to write a book? That's like a big undertaking.
Yeah. So the book is about what I think is important as a designer, that you need to learn how to be a better marketer, and that you need to learn how to entertain people a little bit. They want to see your personality. I also talk about, I'm a big fan of, kind of time management and being acutely aware of what you spend your time on, and how time and profit are interlinked. So I do talk about that, talk about how to create your client avatar. I think I call them all-stars, your client all-stars in the book. Both my kids were in baseball, so I kind of had a little baseball thing going on there. And then, honestly, I talk about that I understand it's a windy road, and that we all make mistakes. I talk about my shiny objects that I pursued in my own life and business that took me off track, took money out of my pocket, kind of took my eye off the ball, to let people know that we all do it. And it's an everyday thing that I work on. Even now, 30 years in my business, I'm still learning what I want my business to look like. So it never really ends. So I just want people to know that it's not like you're a failure. It's just business. Like, that's what it's like to own a business, is it's just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the book and really wanted it to be basically like a workbook. There's places at the end of every chapter to write notes and takeaways so that you can continually come back to the book and, just remind yourself of some things that struck you as you go through it. So, the reason I wrote that book is, again, comes back from my marketing group. It is a lead magnet for my business. So, everyone that was in the group that I was in had all written a book, and I wanted to write a book too. And so that's what I did. And I actually based it off of a keynote speech that I did for a design group down here, became the working chapters of the book. And from there, filled it out and created, the book in the end.
Oh my gosh, I think that's amazing. How long did it take you to write the book from start to print?
Well, first of all, it took way too long. I have another book sitting in the drawer I have two books sitting in the drawer that have been in the drawer for 4 years, maybe. Yes, I have a consumer book and I also have a second design book sitting there. So I don't know if I can be a good gauge of how long things take. And that partly was because I was worried about creating a book, right? So, so if we condensed it, let's just say we condensed it, I would say it took 2 months.
Oh, wow. That sounds easy.
It actually can be relatively easy if you use it as a lead magnet. My intention, which is not usually what most people's intention are when they write a book, when they write a book, they want to sell it and they want to become,
best-selling author.
A best-selling author. Yes, exactly. That is not my intention. My intention is to help people. So I have a free download of the book, and you can also find it on Amazon, and there are hard copies available. But the intention was not to be a best-selling author. The intention was to help people run a better business, right? And to get some knowledge from that they could implement right away.
Yeah, I love that. It's awesome. And the book is titled Elevate, right?
Yes, it is called Elevate. Yes.
So everyone can find that. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really neat seeing, maybe I appreciate this because of where I'm at in my own career, but I'm at a place now where I'm my interests are shifting.
Yes.
And as a business owner, I'm growing and I'm hungry for more learning. I'm hungry for more growth and just to do something different. And so I've been running my design business for, I don't know, however many years, like a decade now, and I love it, but I am so inspired by the business side of it. And I started to learn throughout my journey that the business side is really important. And without that, it's hard to be successful. And so I really just sort of latched on to any bit of learning I could get, any business coach or community that I joined, to just start to implement those. And I noticed the big transformations that happened inside my own business once I started to pay attention to the marketing, for example, to implement a process, to pay attention to the customer experience, all the different elements, the finances. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Big one. And so for me, I realized that my interest in business started to outweigh my interest in the actual design side of it. And so obviously I've started to structure my team to reflect that. So, but as a result, I'm really interested in meeting other individuals like yourself who are experiencing somewhat of a similar transformation, because I think it's just a natural evolution. And I love having these conversations because anyone who's listening to this right now, whether they're just starting their design business, they're, a bit further along, you might find that you have other passions for certain areas of your business, and that's okay. I think we think we have to pick one career and just go for the rest of our lives.
Exactly.
And any designers who are listening that have already made the career change into design, they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
There's so many designers I know in our community and my friends that used to be in marketing or worked in corporate or did real estate. And they realize, you know what, I'm finding I'm more interested in the design. And so for me, it's the flip side. It's I started in design, well, other than the acting thing, but that didn't last. right? And
But
now,
that can serve you so well in so
Yeah.
many aspects. Yes.
yeah, I'm okay to show up with my face on camera live. It doesn't bother me. So it helps there. But yeah, I think that's so interesting. So do you still have design projects?
I do. I do still have design projects, but the goal for me is to, so I learned a while ago, and I actually kind of stumbled into this when I was in that mastermind. People would come up to me and say, "You have such great insights for other people in their business. Why are you not coaching?" And I was like, because I'm a designer and I don't know, what would I do? And so they sort of pushed me and saw something in that. And the goal for me is to transition to a completely, I call it a non-location specific business, where
That's a wordy way of saying,
or an online business,
Yeah.
an online business. Yeah. So, my goal is to transition to an online business so that I can travel and do some things and have a little more freedom where I don't have to specifically be in beautiful Naples, Florida. I know, boo-hoo, everybody's really feeling bad for me. But, that's really my goal. And I just really I've always loved to teach and have conversations with how people learn and how to create different ways to get across the same information so that they understand it and can take it in. So yeah, that's definitely something that's been so important to me. And I, again, to your point, been building my team as well. I have a bunch of virtual assistants that help me and, keep me moving forward on that. Cause I could not do both. I could not have feet in both worlds right now without some extra help.
Yeah. It's very hard to do it all yourself. And I think when we start anything new, whether it's an interior design business or an online business, you have momentum at the beginning because you're really excited. Right? And there's so much passion there, and you could work 24 hours. In fact, most people start that way, right? Like I would be in bed with my laptop. I was so excited with the mood board, and I would overthink, and it would take me like 10 hours to come up with a simple design because the options, but it was fun for me and it didn't feel like work. Right.
Right.
And then, on the weekend, I'm just going to do the thing. And it was so exciting. I'm going to go to Cravat and select fabrics. And, it would be like 2 hours. I'll go back again. And that was so fun and exciting. But sometimes the novelty wears off a tad. And that's when it's helpful because you can't do everything forever.
No, and it's not sustainable in so many ways. It's not profitable, and it's also mentally, it just wears you out, and you have to fill that tank or else you can't be creative, which is what you need to be, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think understanding too where your own personal strengths lie and how they help your business helps to, we're not here to talk about hiring. That's a whole other podcast.
Oh yeah.
It helps you to start to see what areas could you use some help. Maybe it's a virtual assistant, right? Maybe it's a bookkeeper, whatever it might look like, so that you can continue that momentum and continue to grow. And I think that for a lot of solo designers, that's sometimes where you get stuck. Like I see designers in our community, and this was me. It's just me. And it's that overwhelm, like marketing my business. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
How can I do that too? But that's one of the most important things, right? Because the biggest complaint that I hear from designers is that this I do not have a steady stream of opportunities. But if you don't take any time to market, then you will never have a steady stream of opportunities. So that has to be an equal, I think, priority. And when you have a steady stream of opportunities, then you can pick and choose what opportunities you take, which is, again, goes back to finding the ideal client and creating the boundary of being able to say no to those that aren't the right ones. You can only do that if you feel like you have other things coming.
It's true. It's so true. And then when you don't have something coming down the pipeline, that's when the panic starts to set in. I've been there many times.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I guess I'll just do that living room. Or, you know what? I said I wasn't going to help my friend, but shoot, I don't know where the next project's. So then you get built up with all these projects you don't really want to do. And then when the big one comes, you don't have,
you can't take it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you try to take it and then you
take it. I was going to say, you don't turn that one down. You never do.
Yeah.
No, you just make yourself crazy. Yeah. for sure.
Yeah, because one of the things that I see a lot of designers do, and I've seen it in myself for years, is it can be, if you're not strategic about marketing, it can be a bit of a boom bust scenario where there's ebbs and flows, right? And so, oh my God, all of a sudden everybody wants to hire me. I'm so busy. And so you dive in serving those clients and you completely fall off the marketing. This has been my story for like 8 years.
Right.
And the projects are wrapping up. Oh no, like the leads have dried up. Like what's going on? Oh, well, Rebecca, you haven't been as active. You haven't been doing the things that you did before to bring those clients in. Now it's like, and I have a friend in the city who just said that. She's like, oh my gosh, it's getting slow. Like I'm sending out a newsletter. I'm sending out referral requests. And it's like this big push.
Yep.
Right. And so it's not like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you as a busy entrepreneur, how do we as busy entrepreneurs maintain that marketing momentum when things get busy, and so that we don't fall off, so that we can continue to fill the pipeline?
Yeah. So I think we should be looking at what's most effective. You mentioned a newsletter. I've been doing, I was doing a newsletter for a while and then again fell off right when I got busy, and started it back up at the beginning of the year and have been faithful about it. And I will say, every time I send a newsletter out, which only goes out once a month, I get 1 to 2 referrals, like clockwork, every month. That's a big deal. So if you have to cut back on something, like, I have cut back on some of my Instagram postings and things like that, just because I'm doing so many podcasts and there's a bunch of other things that I'm doing. I do not miss that newsletter. That newsletter goes out. And in fact, I'm doing 2, because I do one for design clients and one for coaching clients. So that nothing else like that is the priority. So I think you have to think about what can you do that is not going to shift. And again, it comes back to referrals. And where's your best source of referrals, and how can you continually stay in touch with that group so that you're always top of mind? A newsletter is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's still undervalued, the email list and the importance and the power of it.
Oh, so important. And you own, that's something you own. You don't own any of these other things that can go away at any time.
Yeah. I just had a thought there when you were saying about where they are. It's understanding too, and this is something that that I've been encouraging others to do, which is look at the projects that you got over the last year and what is their referral source? Like, where did they come from? How did they find you? And so, to be honest with you, for the first 5 years of my business, I never asked. And I only knew if it was offered to me. If it was like, oh, Mary Lee recommended me. Okay, great. Right. Then I knew that there was the connection. So I didn't ask and I did not track it until someone said to me, track where your leads are coming from.
100%.
And I think actually I listened to a Jenna Kutcher podcast, and it was when she was a photographer and she noticed her best projects came from a wedding planner, I think. And then I went through, and at the time, my best projects all came from high school friends.
Wow.
Random.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was a great reminder. Hey, maybe if I just spent a little bit more time reconnecting with my high school friends, maybe if I took someone to dinner or sent them a thank you Starbucks card, that might go a lot further for me.
For more referrals.
Than 50 Instagram stories or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, one of the things I was thinking of as soon as you said that is, well, how can you thank the person for a referral if you don't ever ask where the referral came from? And so that's an important portion of continuing to get additional referrals from that great source. So I would definitely start a spreadsheet, and whenever you get something, I have a call sheet that I do, and I always write on my call sheet who the referral is from. Mm-hmm. So you definitely want to that day at least send them an email and then follow it up with a nice handwritten note. If it's multiples, mm-hmm. I just sent out a gift card to someone who, believe it or not, is another designer that has been sending me tons of referrals. And just sent her a little gift card, just said, thank you so much. It wasn't a big thing, but I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that it was just so nice. And here's the other thing. When someone refers you like a builder, I've had builders who basically sold the job for me.
Wow.
because they're like, you need to work with this person. They are the best person for you. They are going to help you with this process. So by the time you get the call, you just have to give them the proposal and they're sending the money. I mean, so why not go that route, right? And as much as I love referrals from clients, because I do get referrals from clients, they're not always as qualified as if they're coming from a builder source, building manager source who's got like a high rise residential building. So we know, the type of units that are in that, or a realtor or something like that, because they're kind of already pre-qualified in most ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are really powerful. I see designers. I've never had that. I've never had like a builder that refers me, but I have design friends who've had that, or a contractor, remodeler that's always right. And he just happens to get the type of clients that are her ideal clients. He knows her design aesthetic. They work well together. And so she's fielding all these new projects that she didn't even have to do very much for, other than have built a relationship with that builder.
Exactly. Makes life a little easier. And when we're doing all the other things, which we are, many of us are wearing many hats, that can be a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a good way to go, right?
Totally. I love it. All right. We're wrapping up on our time here, but before we sign off, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you think would be really useful for the audience today?
So I would just say, surround yourself with super smart people. So get out there and, continue to network. And, I will give a recommendation of a book that I really like that I read recently, which was called The Big Leap. Excellent book. Have you read that book?
I haven't, but I've heard of it. So
you should.
This is my second reminder to read it.
No, it's so good because it really just reminds you of how even when you think you're somewhat enlightened, that, there's still work to do. Let's just say that. Just things that happened in our past, things that maybe someone has said to us that we didn't realize we were still holding on to and holding us back. And it's an excellent book. So I do recommend that one.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm always looking for, typically I listen to them on Audible.
There you go. Yep. Sounds good.
Most busy professionals. I'm like, I'm in the car. Yes, I get to read a book. Because I don't know about you, but I have two kids. They're pretty young still. They're 5 and 7.
Oh yeah. You're not reading any books at home.
Yeah. It's really funny. My husband laughs at me when I bring a book to the cottage for the weekend. He's like, why did you bring that dead weight? Like, you're not even going to take it out of your bag. I'm like, but if I don't put it in, then I'll have a moment and think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd brought a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love reading books, but, I do it super early in the morning, but my kids are older now. So I have that luxury of a little more time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, I'm really appreciative of you taking the time to be here on the podcast. As with every episode, I always ask our guests if they can share one little last nugget of wisdom, like a little takeaway for our audience. I should tell you at the beginning. I'm so sorry. It's like
it was sent in the email. It was sent in the email.
I think I told Mira, I'm like, you got to start sending this because like it's still 3 years and I don't remember to tell people.
No, I would say, the thing that just popped into my head is that you're better than you think you are. You're further along than you think you are. You've done more than you think you've done. So pat yourself on the back for that. Just be happy where you're at and sometimes reflect on how far you've actually come and be thankful for that.
Yeah, we are always the first to really not recognize our own successes.
100%.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. And where can everyone find you, Pamela?
So you can definitely find me on Instagram at Pamela Durkin, and I have a website, pamela-durkin.com. You can find me there. So definitely reach out. If you've listened to the podcast, reach out and let me know what you think.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Wasn't that such a great episode? I always love talking about marketing and the idea of finding and understanding your ideal client. It feels like a broken record to me sometimes that I talk about it so much. But, Pamela's interview really reminded me that is where the power lies, right? It's connecting with that client And it's doing it through storytelling. I love one of my biggest takeaways from this episode is where she compares how designers like to report versus storytell. The reporting versus storytelling, which I sort of liken to the how versus the why. I love that. It's very clear to me that when you tell the story of how you transformed your clients' homes or how you improved their lives, you are connecting with those other future clients at a deeper level. And I love that she says clients want to see your personality because let's face it, that's something that I've always talked about being so important, showing up for who you are on Instagram, being yourself, whether it's in your copywriting on your website, sharing pictures of who you are, because that's how you connect with your future client. That was a good episode. I hope you enjoyed it too. Remember, as Pamela says, you're further along than you think you are. So give yourselves a pat on the back. What are you going to do because of this episode to improve your marketing even just a tiny notch? Let me know. I'll see you inside the Designer Meetup Facebook group. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.